I made the least optimal financial decision. I could have landing a job anywhere, clearly. I had a couple of offers if I wanted to do it. I turned 50 last year, right? And there's a point in life where you go for your dream or not.
Second act, lives beyond the job title.
All right. Hey, Fabrice. I'm so excited to have you on Second Act, Life Beyond the Job Title. Welcome, welcome. How are you doing today?
Hi, Gayatri. Super excited to be here and glad to see you again.
All right, let's jump in because your story is a great one. You know, you've lived multiple professional lives already, right? So last 2 decades, you've been an entrepreneur, 2 times entrepreneur, then you've been a VP of product at Salesforce with some truly meaningful wins. And then you surprised a lot of people. You traded strategy decks for recipe cards and stepped into the world of French cookie guys. So what inspired you to make that jump?
It's really surprising first, yeah. Moving from product management to making cookies, French cookies. I think first of all, I've always been an entrepreneur. I'm a builder. As you said, I had 2 startups prior to joining Salesforce. And food as a French person is close to my heart. And really, the trigger is really at the point in life, you know, when you have a dream, right? You have to take a shot, right? And there's only just a few moments in life where you can take a shot at it. And I always wanted to do it. And the opportunity came when I was actually part of Layoff at Salesforce. And I said, hey, you know, it might be a sign. Maybe it's serendipity. And I said, okay, let's just do it. Let's be crazy and go for it.
Yeah. So let's talk about the timing some more for a moment. So you had an option of either, I guess, going back into another tech profile role, or you had this option of doing something different. So what about that time felt like, okay, this is the right time. I want to try it?
Yeah. Well, there's many factors. I had spent 12 years at Salesforce, right? Really going all around product, ended up managing team, bigger products. It was great, but I think I needed something more fulfilling in a way, personally. I think, again, my very first startup was Eatricious. The motto was Eat Nutritious, Eat Delicious. It was on food already. More healthy website with website with healthy recipes online. Did that back in 2007 when I arrived in the US. And so food, again, was core to it. That's a French culture. And, you know, I turned 50 last year, right? And there's a point in life where you go for your dream or not. And, you know, I concretely, interestingly, I made the least optimal financial decision. I could have landing a job anywhere, clearly. I had a couple of offers if I wanted to do it. While the money is good, sometimes there's a calling, as they say. Sometimes you know in your head you want to do something, and it's just up to you if you want to make the jump. I have to say that from a pragmatic standpoint, I'm a risk-averse person, right? So you will say, so you're risk-averse, and you decide to launch a food business. By the way, food is very low margin, so doesn't make any sense, right? It does not in a way, but it does too, because I'm very pragmatic also. I knew I had a severance package. Okay, it's buying me time, giving me a bit of clarity, giving me a freedom to try, right? That's how I looked at it. So I can safely go into that business at least for a year and give it a try without being worried about finance in a way, right? And again, what do you do if you move to a new job, right? In my mind, if I go back to the new job, well, I'll be stuck in a good way, right? We're stuck into that career and that job for the next 5 or 10 years, right? Like I was 12 years at Salesforce, which were fantastic, but you don't go back to a job just to say in 6 months, I'm going to do that, go for that dream, right? So I think there's many factors that made it like, hey, yeah, let's take the risk. Maybe last but not least, it was not my first jump, right? People need to understand that when you've never done something crazy, it's hard. But I've lived and worked in 6 countries. So I've moved a little bit. At a point of time, I had a very good job in Amsterdam as a software engineer that I left to move to Bulgaria, Sofia, Bulgaria. So those are some changes that I think whether they work or not, I think they work for me, but they shape you a bit in letting you, giving permissions to do things that might look to the outsider who has never made those jumps a bit crazy, right?
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I think what you're saying is very profound, right? It's almost like a muscle. The more you do it, the more comfortable you are taking that leap. So yeah, you want to kind of experiment and get more things. And it's never like hey, one shot success, right? In your case, you've pivoted quite a bit, like you said, in different roles. Oh, I didn't realize you were also engineer at some point. So, okay, engineer to PM to 2X entrepreneur to product leadership to food entrepreneur. Okay, that's amazing. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the evaluating risk piece, right? Like you said, for you were thinking about, hey, it's almost like a planned sabbatical in a way, the 1 year runway that you were talking about. Within that 1 year, what were the things you were optimizing for? Like, what did you think you would see for you to figure out that, okay, this is going to be something I want to carry through post 1 year?
Yeah. So obviously having a bit of financial reserves helps, right? Free up your mind. I think that the way I looked at it in terms of risk, opportunity and risk, doing this is full risk on. We know that most business fail, and this is not a startup, by the way, this is a business. It's not like someone is giving you $10 million and go and build something. No, here it's my money. Here it's my time. If I don't sell cookies, I don't pay the bills. I cannot support the family. So the package I got in a way through the layoff gave me a bit of permission to try, knowing that it's full risk on. Right. I think the other way I looked at it too, I tend to be very logical and risk averse, but logical in my approach. When you invest in your own business, right, the cost, if you invest $10,000, you are not losing $10,000. You are losing $10,000 minus your tax rate, right? Because that you get back, right? Because it's deductible. So just imagine in California, if you tax at 35%, very common for people, you get there very quickly, plus 10% state tax, you're already at 45%. So for every dollar you spend in your business, if you still have some income elsewhere, it could cost you just 55 cents on the dollar, right? So that's another way to look at risk. And what it does for me, it helped me say, okay, it might not be as risky as I thought, right? The thing that many people might think is the opportunity cost, right? Many people might think, oh my God, you could have got a job as a VP, it pays very well, right? That you are not getting, that's a huge opportunity cost. Yeah, that's true. But there's two things, right? First, you have to be okay not comparing a new life with the previous one. It's very, very important, right? And you have, in a way, I try to give myself permissions to succeed and not think about the opportunity cost, saying, okay, that's a new start, right? That's a new start. It's a different framework it's a different stage in life. I'm not going to try to define success for that stage against the success of the previous stage, right? And that is very important. Otherwise, you do it 2 months, 3 months, and if your referential is what you used to earn before, what was your title, how people looked at you, it's not going to work.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. It's almost a bit of like identity shift in terms of like how you're valuing success or what your KPIs even are for this new journey. Okay, yeah. So Fabrice, let's talk about that first launch experience, right? So in product, we talk about a minimum viable product or MVP. In your case, it's minimum viable cookie. How did you go about figuring out what you wanted to build first?
So you must be reading my mind because I really thought about the hero product to launch the business. First, when we say French cookies, typically traditional recipes that are sometimes 200 years old. French people have been growing up with it. We know those cookies very well. And that's what I'm bringing to the US, right? But what was going to be the one that I wanted to launch? And I chose the one which is a very simple butter cookie, right? That comes from my region. It's from Nantes. It's from 1886, the recipe, first time it was invented. So it's very traditional, historical. And because they do, you see the embossing they do on the cookie, I said, okay, this is going to be my, beside being a classical French cookie, I'm going to emboss the cookie. And this because we have 3D printing capabilities, we can customize the message. This is a true hero product, right? It can really shine as a product. So we started with that, right? Even though the business plan called for other traditional French recipes, so you might be familiar with. So right now, I'll just show you, for instance, right now I have an almond cookie from southwest of France. This one is a chocolate treat that all mothers used to make for the kids. And there's a long list of cookies I have in mind. I didn't develop all of them, but I did that one first, mainly again, because it was unique. It had the quality of being French authentic, right? It's good. It's a buttery cookie, real butter. And in a way, it's personalized. I'm a huge believer in personalization, right? Whether you want to start with personalization at the beginning as your product or not, debatable as a product manager, right? But that was the idea. And then eventually, based on feedback, that was super interesting, actually. We thought that the personalization will be a key driver of sales, right? And actually, when we started to go to festivals, pop-ups, farmers market, we realized that people were more interested into eating the cookie than looking at the message. And the reason is probably because we were in a setting where people are just here to buy good food, not to make a gift. Because the whole point is, the whole vision was about having personalized gifts through those cookies. You can have your message. Like right now, we are around Valentine's Day. I had many customers getting a special cookie that say, I love you. So, it's a kind of gift that feels, it's a kind of edible gift, but we were not there, right? So in a way, the hero product was probably not the right call at the beginning. And we ended up pivoting very quickly to a set of recipe that I designed to show what we can do, that have different tastes, right? That's the one I was showing here. And that let also people just eat cookie rather than trying to sell them a gift. Does that make
Got it.
sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And you mentioned like going into these pop-ups, and was that kind of your initial testing ground? So at that time, did you already have like a commercial kitchen, or did you tell me a little bit about that
Yeah,
setup at this time when you were testing?
sure. So as I said earlier, I gave myself permission to succeed. And that also means set up the business correctly, meaning not doing it from home, but going to a commercial kitchen. That's what professional people do because you have access to industrial equipment. So it's a super oven, prep area, that's amazing. And that was important. I'm a strong believer in, you have to put your money where your mouth is, and having a real commercial kitchen was important, right? I think interestingly, the go-to-market was twofold, right? First, direct to consumer, B2C, and we realized we needed to show the product. So pop-ups, farmers market, festival made a lot of sense for us. They might not be the long-term goal, but they made a lot of sense to get early feedback. I think my research was more like trying to sell the product and see how people react. We could see if they were interested. And more than that, you see right away on the spot if they're willing to buy or not, and at what price, right? So that was very interesting. The whole idea was to have a customer journey where we convert the early adopters into people who buy online. So I have a newsletter every Friday where I write about French culture, tradition, and the idea is to connect with my fans, give them a little bit of a taste of France every week and stay connected. And they can think of me when they want something, some cookies, and come back and order online. So that was kind of the idea. So I built a Shopify storefront to sell online too. Right. Obviously, this has evolved. We discussed it offline, it has evolved, but that was the original.
Okay, got it. Yeah. So actually, few follow-ups there. So one was, I think you mentioned the shift to more of a B2B gifting. Is that something that you are looking to pivot to? Tell us more about that.
Yeah. So that's the big pivot I'm making this year. So we are currently in year 2, just starting year 2 of the business. Year 1 was a fantastic learning ground, truly. I will say what we learned first is that, as I said, we started with message cookie. They were in gift box, and we made that for special experience like Mother's Day, Easter. And what happened is that we will go to this market and make plenty and not sell all of them. And what do you do with cookie that have Happy Mother's Day? That you cannot sell. You think there's a problem, right? So that's where the first pivot was to introduce the cookie I showed you, more gourmet cookie, so people can just come to us and taste our cookies, because they told us, yeah, we're really interested to taste a cookie. At the same time, last year, the second pivot we made is to change our name, because we started with a name that not a single person could remember or pronounce. It was called Douceur Elise. So Elise's sweetness, named after my grandmother. Terrible choice from marketer I am. So we scratched that and we became the French cookie guys. So that was the first pivot. And one interesting thing, and that's probably something I inherited from Salesforce, I spent a couple of weeks towards the end of December, towards around Christmas, the second half of December, to redo my V2MOM. So people might not be familiar with that, but it's kind of system we use at Salesforce to help us with our vision, the strategy, what we're going to execute on, what are our priorities. So V2MOM stands for vision, value, methods, obstacles, and measures. Creating my own, and it was a great time of reflection. One of the things you realize after 1 year in the food business, this is a very, very low margin business. Software is at 50% margin, and you don't have to, once it's there, it's there. You can just sell it. It's just a sales guy that costs you a bit of money. Food is so different. It's a low margin business. And I realized that the approach of going to markets, pop-ups, festival, and even the online approach was not going to work or scale fast enough to make it a profitable business, just to be able to even live, right? And that's where you have, I had a kind of oh moment, right? Like, okay, and it's not, by the way, it's not selling, it's not saying that I was not selling, right? But if I were going to do as many markets, festival that I could based on my time, that will not be a scalable business, right? It's very problematic, right? So I say, let's think, right? I always wanted to be into the more, I'm thinking of the business offering something a bit more premium, a bit more for special occasion, gifts, enjoy to people. So I thought, okay, this is something I need to get back to, right? That I had initially in the hero product, but perhaps I didn't do it well. And I need to do it in a way that it scales, right? And one of the trigger towards the end of the year, I tested. So I already did that in my Q4 last year, and I tested a gift box, and actually I sold quite a few. I think you got one.
Yes, they were
Because
delicious.
yes, I actually, for the story, my colleagues at Salesforce bought some for the whole team, and they were distributed. And there's a few. The signals were really good, even online. I sold quite a few of those boxes. Obviously, it was Christmas, but the idea of a gifting was working. And what it showed is that when you sell to a business, you sell at much higher volume, right? If your offering is on the gifting, if your offering is on maybe meetings and so on. And it has implications, because if you're going to make, it's much easier to make 50 gift boxes all together and ship it at once than take 50 individual B2C orders, right? If I had to explain that, right? And it's much easier to get one customer, in a way, business customer to on average order, let's say $300. I'll make that up, rather than having a B2C customer who is going to take as much time to acquire and is going to have an average order of $30, $40. So as I decided to pivot to B2B, right? And with a key focus on barrier business, tech, but also service business. And I'm a strong believer of we grew up on those cookies in France, taking coffee, right? Connecting with the neighbors, the families. I grew up in a small village, right? It was a moment of joy, but a moment of discussion, getting together, right? And I should believe that those cookies, that's just something I'm developing right now, can be used for meetings, right? We often have meetings that are a very key moment in a partnership, in a relationship with a customer and partner. And those cookies, what I'm bringing here is simplicity first for the person who wants a no-brainer food item to bring that is easy to take, consume, and that's one of the focus area right now, meetings, and slowly extending to gift offerings. So it's a big shift, right, compared to last year, big bet. But again, I think that I'll finish on that. You never get it right when you launch this business. It's my third startup. And when people ask me advice on startup, I always tell them, I have one advice: fail fast, right? Fail fast, right? If that doesn't work, you can still pivot and try, but you don't have unlimited time, right? We're discussing about time, right? But it's not unlimited, right? So that's why the pivot is happening. It's never fun to pivot, trust me. But yeah, that's a new journey this year.
And I think that's where, having received those box of cookies, they were personalized and they had the right thing. So that was pretty nice touch, which I think your 3D printing and all of that stuff really plays in there as well. So let's step back, Fabrice, and talk about the reality of a food business. That's very different from running a product, right? So for somebody who is thinking, or even to understand this food business, if we talk about architecture diagrams, like what are some of the layers, like this labor, compliance, like what are some of the key dimensions to think about in a food business?
First, like in any business, there's the administrative part, right? A lot of paperwork, trust me, especially in the food business. I think there's a permit for everything. Even simple, you would think that simple cookies don't require, because we don't deal with milk, fresh products. You know, once it's cooked, it has a shelf life of a few weeks. But still, with that, you need a lot of permits, right? You need to set up a company, anyway. So the whole administrative is already a bit of work. You need to be certified as a food manager. Without that, you cannot go to commercial kitchen, right? And by the way, that certification was probably more difficult than taking the GMAT for my MBA. I scored much better at the GMAT worldwide than at that one, because things are hard sometimes. Food is not simple. So that's the first thing, right? Second thing, let's say you have the business, you're ready to start. You need to find a commercial kitchen. Fun story, we found one. First one was in Auckland, downtown. And after 2 weeks, we realized that was the wrong kitchen for us, because the oven were not good enough in a way to bake cookies. It was good to put a roast, to heat up things, but that's the kind of reality that hits you hard. Without a good production system, like an oven and a good commercial kitchen, you're out of business, right? So that's the second layer. I would say reality of a business is also, let's say you have the kitchen, now you need the supplies, right? Where do you get your flour, right? Where you get your eggs? It seems like simple enough, but it's not. You need to identify the wholesaler. You need to test the product. We're very picky on the butter we use, so not all butter are created equal. Obviously, there's a price challenge that you face. As you go through the suppliers, you start getting an idea about your margin, right? Sometimes you start sweating because the product cost keeps increasing. Chocolate, we use chocolate. It's been a terrible year. So all that is part of the reality of the business. And then let's say you get your product, you go and produce. You still need to package your product to sell it in a way that is attractive to people. That again takes a lot of time. And what people need to understand is that in the food business, I don't come from the food business, so everything is new, right? And you have to do everything yourself, right? Or if you try to get someone to do packaging for you, you're probably going to go for a much higher cost, right? So the start is very tough, right? And then let's say you do all that, right? You have a kitchen, you can produce, you can package. It doesn't mean you have a customer, right? You have to create demand for your product. And I didn't expect demand generation to be that hard, honestly. It's probably the hardest thing ever. Demand generation in a way that, again, you don't go to a platform that will take 20, 30% of your revenue. You don't go through a retailer that will place your product on the shelf. It will take 50% of your gross margin. So you need, again, to find a distribution channel that will let you make a bit of money. And that is very, very, very challenging. So that's the reality of the food business. And
what are the
Yeah.
channels you're looking at right now? I mean, I think you mentioned you're pivoting a little bit to more B2B, but in general, like what are the channels you considered and you finally went?
one thing I learned from my years as a product manager, it's as important to answer the question of what you are not considering than what you are considering.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because you need clarity in your thoughts and your actions. So as I said, I could have placed my product in a specialty store, retail store, but you have to give 40 to 50% of your gross margin, which means you don't have a business, or I don't have a business anymore. You cannot do that, right? I could possibly sell through online platform, maybe it's between 20, 40%, but not interested right now to give that. Some people might say, hey, I'm going to buy my way in. Not now. And last year, because we were doing B2C, pop-up festivals, farmers market made sense with the assumptions that we could convert those early customers into online customers. So there was a repeat. We would not have to meet them every Saturday or Sunday, right? So it could scale. I think that assumptions was way too optimistic, right? That's also one reason for the pivot, right? Because the math didn't work. So this year for B2B, I'm going in a way more direct for now, whether it's right or wrong, right? Because one thing I learned from last year is that my marketing, the cookies are doing the marketing for me, right? They are selling themselves, right? What I mean is that when someone tastes the product, that person has a good chance to convert, right? So there's no need to do Instagram, Facebook ads. It's useless. Nobody is going to buy food because they see it on an ad, at least not my food, right? And it only works maybe like Super Bowl yesterday. You have some food. Right. And the food is already a huge brand, but when you are small, it doesn't work. You don't buy your way there. So it leaves you with very few options. Right now, my option clearly is to put the product into the mouth of my target customer, right? So what I'm doing is actually I'm creating taste kit, right? That I'm going to send to customer, so give to customer, right? So that's my marketing cost in a way. It's like thinking of having a sales rep, a marketing team working, being paid to try to convert customer, right? Except that that's my cookie box and me, my time making them, plus the cost of ingredients, right? Obviously, I have to find the right targets. So I have to be a bit of work to identify them. It might be more direct at the beginning, but that's really the go-to-market, number one. I do also on the side, and since we're talking go-to-market, B2C, I still do fundraising for schools. There's a lot of fundraising in the area. That one is still one that I think has potential because I give 20% back, which I think is a good, it's a good number, right? You can hardly do more than 20%. And it gives me an open door when I do that into customers, right? Potentially. So the parents, families who are buying fundraising can become customers. And what I realized last year, I didn't see it like this. Many of my B2B, so I've had customers already B2B last year, right? But many of my B2B customers are coming from B2C. So we often think in terms of, okay, this is B2B, this is B2C, they don't interact, but the boundaries are very thin, very, very thin. So someone who tried your product at home might understand that you could be a good opportunity at work too, right?
Got it. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about, because we spoke about how you're spending your time, right? I'm also just curious, like as you're going through this, how do you think about like paying yourself? Say, I think the difference between a corporate job and a not corporate job is corporate job, you have a certain fixed pay you can expect every month. Now, as a solopreneur, like are you trying to bake that in your cost of your time into the price of the cookies, or are you deferring that to like, hey, when I hit this mark, that's when I'm going to do it? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. So I want to pay myself. It's a business first, it's not a startup. So it's clear that I have to pay myself in year one. So I started a business with a partner last year, and we were clear that in year one, we will not pay ourselves, right? For obvious reasons. So we put equity, didn't pay ourselves because there's always a point in time when you launch a business that you have to invest in the business and you cannot just expect to take some money home. As I did the pivot and I wrote the V2MUM, my V2MUM has a target number, a minimum number I need to make this year to pay myself. And the V2MUM has also, and I think, by the way, I insist on V2MUM because it's a fantastic tool to help me stay focused on the objective and what I need to do to succeed. There's a clause in my V2MUM, not only it's very easy to define success, right? But there's also a clause to say, hey, if we don't get there, maybe it's time to stop, right? So I need to pay myself this year. What I've done when I calculate my margin, my time is included, right? So at a very low number, because I'm treating that production time as if I was paying anyone, it's market rate, right? For now, but this is included. And the only way I can truly pay myself, right, is not by spending time on baking, cooking, is by eventually reaching that scale and having enough contribution margin in the business to pay me. Because eventually I cannot, if the business is successful, I cannot be the one spending 3 days a week in the kitchen. And that's why I pivoted away from the festival markets. They are extremely time consuming. That's one of the reasons when I counted the time I was spending to go to a festival, a pop-up, a market, when you count very clearly your time, and I put actually a factor, I put a ratio on my time in the sense that I didn't consider, you could get someone for $20, $25 an hour to be at a pop-up, right? But I put my time at $100, $150 an hour because the business can only be successful if you can spend time building it. So I needed to capture that the value of my time, me building the business, as opposed to me spending time on things that might not help the business. And when you put that number, right, on your time, you realize that, oh my God, I'll have to go on Saturday and Sunday to farmers market and do minimum 2 or 3 days in the kitchen and packaging, even with some help, just to do that. And I cannot develop the business further, right? So that putting a true value, right, on your time helped a lot. So yeah, and eventually, again, you have to pay yourself, but you cannot postpone it. I'm not paying myself right now, but the goal is to pay myself this year, right? Yeah. Otherwise, maybe there's no business, right? So let's see. Fingers crossed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, by the way, how big is the team today? You mentioned you had somebody helping out at the kitchen.
I would say right now it's a solo business. So I started with my partner, a good friend, Laurent, last year. He's not with me anymore. I have one person dedicated in the kitchen coming with me when I produce, not employed, just more contractor helper, right? And eventually I can scale that, but it follows demand, right? So right now it's me mostly plus one person helping in the kitchen. So it's really one person business for now, right?
Wow. That's awesome that you're actually doing all of that as a one-person business. So you mentioned like leaning heavily on like AI agents, automation, right? So what are some tasks that you've successfully offloaded off to AI where it's made the biggest difference in your view?
Yeah. So this business is built heavily on AI. I'll confess. First, because I'm a big fan and I have the unfair advantage of having touched and practiced AI for quite some time. I'll give you some example of where it's helping me. But again, the philosophy why I'm doing everything around AI is because I think For small businesses, AI can give unfair competitive advantage, lowering the cost, driving faster innovation. And I'll give you a few examples. When you look at my website, thefrenchcookieguys.com, I just did a V2, reworked the copy, the visuals on the product. I probably spend a week and 30, 40 hours talking to ChatGPT to recreate the copy, how we going to organize the structure, what makes sense for the customer journey. And I created all my images through Google Nano, right? So that, and you could say if someone had to do it, you could pay an agency to do it, or you could get something that is not so great. But I was able to do that very fast. Right. I'm developing right now my offering for the business, right, including the gifting. I typically use, those are not agents, but I create projects in ChatGPT where I have some knowledge, right, in a very specific context. So let's say for B2B, we want to develop a gift offering, right, for different occasion. So we're going to spec, like a product manager will do, we're going to put all that knowledge, spec it, and the role of that mini agent is to assist me, right? And being brutally honest, being a specialist may be in gifting, product, pricing, packaging, product, and I let that agent understand my business context, and we very quickly try to go through some spec, right? In terms of content generation, I'll give you another example. So I write a newsletter every Friday. I'm just sharing a small taste of France to my subscribers. So I have another helper, we call that a ChatGPT project, that has clear instructions to understand that we're writing a newsletter every Friday, sharing a test of France. There's a file that had all the editorial calendar for the whole week of 2026, right? And when we start, it knows the structure I want for the email. It knows the voice I want. It can speak my voice. And I spend probably 10 minutes just discussing, right? And by the way, I do not write anymore. I just do my interaction with ChatGPT speaking like we speak right now, right? That way I can be authentic in the content, but I never write a word. I let ChatGPT write it for me. It took a bit of training, fine tuning, but it's doing that for me. And I'm using the same approach on LinkedIn. I'm sharing a bit of my journey on LinkedIn. And while come from me sharing my experience, right? In very detail, when ChatGPT is just translating that into something that is easier to convey. And it's important because as a non-native English speaker, I could spend hours and hours and hours trying to write that. So there's the writing, I would say the creative side, and this last example I'll give, which is a bit more interesting in terms of operations. I already created, I'm not using it, but I created another, I create agent, it's not really an agent, but think of a ChatGPT project, right, with instructions and files. And here I have a file that has all my recipes, that has the very process to produce a recipe in the kitchen, the steps, the number of people needed. So all that information, right? Your entire process of production. And then I have another one, a spreadsheet that has the orders for the weeks and the due date. And I just build that agent to tell me what to produce right now, right? And also I have the supplies available, what I need to order, and what type of packaging I need to produce in advance. I tested it, so I'm not using it because I'm not at the scale where I need it right now. But I tested it and it worked beautifully. So I can basically feed it all my Shopify orders, customers' orders, and as long as I keep my stock inventory up to date, it's going to tell me what to do, right? How many people I need to hire in the kitchen next week to produce, right? How much time I need to spend if I need to order something in advance, like flour, butter. So that's another example. And it's not that hard to create. You just need to have the information available.
That's pretty cool, actually, like a planning calendar or something to even tell you what to do next. Whatever you're saying reminds me of those IoT ads that you've seen, right? Where the refrigerator gets automatically stocked up
Yep.
and things like that. That's pretty cool. That's
Yeah.
awesome. So you spoke a lot about content, right? How important is that content or storytelling aspect for your brand?
Yeah. Well, I've always been a big fan of HubSpot with the outbound marketing, right, approach. That's how they started, right? I follow their journey, and I think it's a hard one because I think it's important to have original content. It's important to be able to explain what you are doing, whether it's through the website, through the channel like a newsletter, Instagram, Facebook. But I think it's important for the brand. It's important for your presence. It's important for people to, you need to be found, right? The newsletter, for example, is why I'm doing it. I think first, because I like sharing about French culture, right? It's a lot of fun to write, but it's also a way to stay connected with your fan base, right? And giving them something of a bit of value every week, right? So last week I wrote about French school, tradition French school, the long lunch, Wednesday afternoon break, the tradition of a goûter, which is the afternoon break where your kids have the snack. So people learn about it and like it, and eventually you can see some conversions online on your website with orders. On LinkedIn, I think it's again, I do it fun because I said, hey, many people told me, oh, you should share your journey. Why not, right? We're discussing it right now. But at the same time, I think it's a great way to, I like to market without marketing, right? Like the newsletter, I'm not selling. You look at the newsletter, there's no buy, right? And I think with LinkedIn, first you show what you're doing is fun, right? To tell the journey coming from tech, being in the food industry. But at the same time, I'm a strong believer that if you show up repeatedly, you'll find your fans. And eventually, as I'm pivoting to B2B, it made a lot of sense for me to find a platform like LinkedIn and have a voice there and have people maybe be intrigued, learn about me, the journey, maybe connecting the dots and say, hey, yeah, that might be something for us.
Yeah, totally.
And we'll see. So I think the content is never, will it work or not? I don't know. But at least I'm doing that because I'm enjoying it too. Like I'm enjoying spending time with you today.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. I think it's so fascinating when the brands, you understand the people behind the brand. You know, many a times you see the product, but knowing like how they are, their mindset, you know, their story, I think is really something that builds a lot of brand affinity too, right? So
Yeah.
I really enjoy reading that.
It's like, I like to think of my business as a small purple cow. You know, Seth Godin, who wrote the book Purple Cow. And I think when you do your own thing, something very tiny like I'm doing, right? You have a permission to be different, right? And I think you have to take it, but also find the people who like that purple cow, right? And that's what I'm trying to do.
Makes sense. All right. So, you know, we spoke about a lot about the reality of the business, how you're using AI. I'm sure all of this is not without surprises, right? What are some really fun snafus that you've come across that you were like, man, I didn't expect this to happen, but this happened?
Yeah. Well, I'll give you those. I'm not sure those are horror story or surprises, but I'll give you a few. I think that the very first one, I mentioned it a bit, was spending 2 months to select a commercial kitchen to realize on day one, you try the oven, it doesn't work for you.
Yeah. Wow.
Right. And you have that moment where you look your partner in the face, you say nothing, you leave the kitchen and you know, you are looking at each other, what are we going to do, right?
Right.
So that one, it's, by the way, it's part of a learning curve. When you do something new, you need to go through this test failure. So that was one. And the second one, following that one, then you find the right kitchen, right? And it still takes you 3,000 cookies to get that right? With the right consistency, the right embossing, you know, to look perfect, right? Because I've been cooking for many years. I've been cooking since I'm very young. And when you do things in an oven, they always work, right? You do one or you do 10 of each of those cookies, you know. But when you do hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, the defects tend to show up. For example, an oven, they never bake the same way, depending on where you place your tray, because we put 10 trays, right? Each tray has about 50 cookies, so you put 500. We bake faster on the back than the middle, than the front, right? So you have these challenges. So there was another interesting story, and I'll give you a few. You feel free to stop me. Summer comes, right? And oh my, we're in California. It's hot in here, and there's a butter cookie. What happened when you need with the dough to cut the cookie? It doesn't work anymore, and because the kitchen you have now, the new kitchen was cold enough in the winter, and it's an oven in the summer, cannot work from the kitchen. So you have to find a second kitchen that has not AC but a temperature control, so you can actually do the work, right?
Got it.
Things that were very interesting. Also packaging, I think. Packaging has been, so we create a packaging. So I designed the packaging. As you can see, I created that French style packaging sticker. I created a system to make it French. One day for a B2B customer, we sent, he wanted custom cookie like those ones, right? With their own message. We sent 300 of those custom cookies on Wednesday for the meeting on Friday. Yeah, just 2 days in advance. Perfect. Get a message. Fabrice, 1/3 of cookies arrived broken.
Wow.
And that's when you realize that, yes, you changed something in the way you approach packaging that impacted the transport and the way your cookie were moving. But you just have now, it's Wednesday, and the meeting is on Friday, and you need to get this cookie like yesterday to the customer. You have to make them again, and then you go and make the cookie and the same day. And what happened? Because the message had 3 exclamation points, the 3 dots at the bottom of the exclamation point broke from the very beginning. So what happened is that you make a few hundred of those cookies, and one by one, you go and make the dot. And then once you wrap the cookies, it's Wednesday, end of the day, how are you going to ship them, right? Even UPS, USPS have no guarantee to ship it on time. So you end up calling a Uber to ship the cookie. So those are some of the interesting stories. Yeah. It hits you, and that's why the craft food is so different than software, right?
Got it.
There's no forgiveness here.
Just like every day feels like a different kind of a challenge. So in closing, when you're looking back, what are some successes or milestones that really you hold close to you and like they really spark joy?
Yeah. First, just going through the journey, right? Keep showing up, because you have to keep showing up every day and going through that. And even though as I'm pivoting, the first year was not bad, right? We had pop-ups. We did food and wine festivals in September, Palo Alto, in Albany, Solano Stroll, on the biggest food festival. We went all the way to Sacramento, a 3-day festival. Day 2 sold out. We had a line over the 3 days, 10 feet long. So it was really good having that kind of validation, right? Showing that the product worked. And I think the most important was the fact that when you meet your customers, people who don't know you, the taste, they like the product, that on its own is pretty amazing, right? Because they have choice, right? They have choice. And having them say, oh, that's good. I can smell the butter. It's great. And I would say I was thinking about that before going into the podcast, and just rebounding, right? From 12 years, and just the process of deciding to do something different and going for it. And as I say, showing up every day, it's great, right? Whether it works or not, right? I think it's important. It's also, we're setting an example for the kids, for the family, and we'll see, right? I think as this objective for year 2, right? There's been bumps in the road. So one thing I didn't share is that my partner left in Q4. So that was probably something that was both unexpected and not something I wanted. But again, it's part of starting the journey, right? If it was all written, clear, it would be easy. So yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah. So for somebody who's like listening to this thinking, wow, like this is awesome. I have this idea that maybe it's a food business, maybe it's something else, right? Any kind of like bold second act that's different from their current thing. What would be your parting advice to them?
Fail fast.
Fail fast. Yes.
Fail
Okay.
fast. Yeah. And I think we all have dreams, right? I had 10 startups in mind, right? When I started that one. Having a dream is easy. Executing on your dream is so hard, right? And sometimes that's a lesson I learned, I think, in doing things in life. Sometimes we spend a bit too much time staying cozy, experimenting. So in my early startup, I would spend a lot of time building product, not enough selling, right? Compared today, I could spend more time today developing more recipes that I would like to do. But I should not do that because I need first to get the demand for the product, right? So I need to fail fast, right? And we advise people, if they want to do it, fail fast. And number two, I think the financial aspect is always in the mind of people. Give you permission to fail, right? And how much money are you going to lose on that business, right? Make it a write-off, right, from day one. And it's something, I've seen that in a podcast from music teachers. I think one of the big music school in New York. I don't remember the name, biggest one, right? One of the teacher has that approach of saying the student, "Hey, you have an A, okay? Don't worry, I'll give you an." Now I want you to work without the stress. And I think that if you start a new business, give me permission to fail and saying, "Okay, I have 1 year, and I know I need to spend that much money. It's gone." This is liberating, right?
Yes. Makes
And
sense.
then you can do something without waking up every day trying to fight something you should not.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Lots to think about there, Fabrice. All right. So, Fabrice, so what's next for you?
So what's next? I'm clearly focusing on developing the B2B part of the business. And I'm actually launching right now as we speak our cookie box for meetings. It's really designed to make it easy to have a good meeting, but also have a nice cookie that support the meeting. And I'd be happy, by the way, to offer that to your viewers. We can put a link and I'll be happy to send them a box if they're interested. Dearly Bay Area, people in the Bay Area, if you think you want to try out those cookies for your meeting, help the meeting, go ahead and use the link. It's going to be free of charge.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Fabrice. It's been such a fun, inspiring conversation with some brilliant insights. Yeah, thank you for being on the
Thank you,
podcast.
Gayatri. Thank you. I had a blast. Thank you so much.